And I want to welcome everyone to our Planning for Change, Legacy, Estate, and Disaster Preparedness event today. So a couple of things, how this program is going to run. This first half will be a panel discussion. And then in the second half, you'll get to choose a breakout room to have a more in-depth conversation with one of our panelists. So it'll be a two-part event there. We're really excited about trying this out here with you all today. I encourage you to put any questions for our panelists in the chat. In between part 1 and part 2, they'll have a couple of minutes to review those. So if there are things that you want to dive in deeper with them, again, share those in the chat. And so they will be able to see those and answer those in the breakout room. So with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's panel. So Tom Kamber is the founder and executive director of Older Adults Technology Services, or OATS, and Senior Planet. He's a leading expert on aging and technology and is regularly featured in national media. Under his leadership, OATS and Senior Planet have developed award-winning programs for older adults across America, and we're now charitable affiliates of AARP. Tom's taught courses on technology, urban studies, and philanthropy at Columbia University. He's widely published in professional and academic journals, and fun fact is that he's presented his work on 5 continents. He's also the co-founder of the Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance, which has won multiple Grammy Awards and serves on several nonprofit boards of directors and public commissions. I also know that personally this topic is very near and dear to him, so we're really thrilled to have him moderate this important discussion. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom for opening remarks and to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Deirdre. I really appreciate your introduction there and getting us started. I'm super excited to be doing this for a variety of reasons, but one of them is that this is our first day that we've been operating here at our new Senior Planet Center in Miami. So I was going to be out in the main area with a lot of cool stuff going on in the background, but what you would be watching is the paint crews, but carrying their scaffolds back and forth because they still have to do some touch up on the wall. But I'm in our new space here, and we had an event yesterday on digital inclusion here in Miami, and Mayor Suarez was here to open up with us and cut the ribbon, and it was a pretty amazing launch there. So that's a special time and a special place for us. And I want to say that disaster preparedness and the challenges with legacy and end of life for older adults are a topic that is both very urgent and really important to us. We did a disaster preparedness satellite media tour this summer, which happened to fall on the same day that Hurricane Idalia made landfall. And so a lot of the media were really, really interested in finding out more about what folks can do to use technology to prepare for unexpected events and in many cases be ready for things that could even reach the point of loss of life or major property damage. We got coverage all over the country, and there were 24 million media impressions from the interviews. So we know it's something that's on people's minds. We also feel like it's a really important area for people to think about where technology can make a difference. We're always looking for those linkages where technology programming can really move the needle for people and help change lives. And thinking about the sort of legacy issues for end of life and for potential challenges that have this level of gravity is one of the areas where some investment in technology, some investment in learning, some pre-planning and preparation and knowledge and education goes a long way toward making a real difference in people's lives. So this is like a big topic for me. Excuse the fact that it looks like I'm in the basement because I'm in the breakout space at Senior Planet, but I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And I'm just going to take a quick minute and introduce our other panelists, which is the second reason I'm very excited about this, because I know them all to be real luminaries in the field, and I'm excited to hear from them as we discuss this. First, let's start with Cody Barbo, who's an entrepreneur and a 2-time founder from Dallas, Texas. Cody serves as the founder and CEO of Trust and Will, which is a modern estate planning software startup. And as a volunteer, he's on the San Diego State University Alumni Board of Advisors, also on Phi Kappa Theta Fraternity's National Foundation Board. And at home, he is married and a father to a daughter, a dog dad, which I always appreciate. I'm a fellow dog dad there, Cody. And he loves to cook, work out, and mentor other entrepreneurs in his spare time. Our second panelist that's joining us is Glenn Shimkus, who is a technology enthusiast and entrepreneur with nearly 30 years of experience building world-class teams and delivering exceptional products. He's the co-founder and CEO of Prisidio, which offers a digital vault to securely collect, protect, and share your most important information with the key people in your life. Prior to founding Prisidio, he was the co-founder and CEO of Cartavi, which he sold to DocuSign. And the company's product received significant industry recognition, including the prestigious Edison Award for Innovative Services. In his role at DocuSign, Glenn helped the company become the standard in the real estate industry and expand beyond e-signatures. Glenn has also held leadership roles during his career at the National Association of Realtors, Platinum Technology, and Amdocs. He's a respected industry visionary in the fields of document content management and mobile applications, as well as an active advisor and investor in the startup community. And I'll also say, Glenn, by the way, I have a DocuSign that's in my inbox that I'm supposed to go sign when I get off of this seminar. So I see your stuff every day, and I'm a huge admirer and fan of the work you've done. Really amazing entrepreneur in the field. And then finally, we have Shoshana Berger here from IDEO. She's the global head of content and has worked on projects ranging from the end of life to modern Judaism to school lunch, and is co-author with Dr. BJ Miller of A Beginner's Guide to the End, Practical Advice for Living Life and Facing Death. She speaks frequently about the end of life and design on podcasts and at events around the world, including Creative Mornings, Slush, and Tech Festival. As a writer and editor, Shoshana has worked for the New York Times, Fast Company, Wired, and Time. And in 2008, she moved to Denmark for a year to work with the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design and learn why everyone is so happy up in the Nordics. She lives in Berkeley with her husband and above average children. I think that's a reference to our favorite Midwestern radio show. And I really appreciate having her here. I cannot say enough about Shoshana and IDEO as leaders in this field. They're absolutely the go-to people for really visionary thinking about it. So I'm so honored to have you folks here today. I want to get right into the topics. The first thing just to ask people to reflect on and share would be, can we talk a little bit about what's different lately, how the dynamics or the environment has been changing to raise the stakes or to get us to focus in kind of new ways on these topics? What's different lately and why is this urgent right now? Let's, whoever wants to raise their hand, and maybe Glenn go first. I see you're not muted. Get us started.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, first and foremost, I don't need to tell anyone this. We live in turbulent times, and there's so much happening around us. And whether it's what's happening with war overseas, with natural disasters. I live in Florida, and we mentioned earlier Hurricane Idalia. There's more frequent severe natural disasters. The amount of information we have to manage is just purely overwhelming, right? Documents and information, and it comes at us every day. And it's becoming really problematic. And so it really creates a challenge for us that it's always been there, but every one of these areas is really amplified right now. And it just really demands that we need to do something and really pay attention in this area.
Great. How about others, Shoshana or Cody, want to weigh in?
Well, I would just build on what Glenn said. I mean, we are living in a time of real climate disturbance, and we're feeling that firsthand in a way we haven't before, where I'm here in California, we are subject to massive and unpredictable wildfires that can come fast and furious. People are dealing with unforeseen flooding. And the truth is, as much as we prepare for these individual events, we really need a more comprehensive plan for just thinking about emergencies and crises in general. You never want to be left in a situation where you're preparing in the midst of a crisis. You really want to be there further upstream and thinking about it further upstream. And that's hard to do because it's scary to think about these things, and it's uncomfortable, and it's hard for us to contend with the eventualities and the inevitabilities of life. So the way that we try to reframe that in our book, A Beginner's Guide to the End, is to think about this as a gift to your loved ones. Preparing is really about taking care of your loved ones and yourself. And it truly is a gift if you do it in advance.
Excellent. Thank you. How about Cody? What do you have to share?
Yeah, well, I just want to say how grateful I am to have 160-ish people on this call today to talk about this, including Joy Bailey's lovely cat, which I got to see creep on camera here. Brought a smile to my face. Joy, we love your cat. Please keep her on, or him. But the point being is, I for 6 years, my team and I, we've got 85 people. We think about legacy, and we've helped 650,000 families protect their legacy with an estate plan. That's a trust or a will. And as we go deeper in the conversation today, we've got a group of thought leaders and subject matter experts here on making the hardest conversation to have in our lives, death, a lot easier and more comfortable and welcoming. And that's what I'm excited for today's conversation, is that this group, if there's one takeaway, whether it's with your spouse, your family, a neighbor, a loved one, that you can talk about this a little more openly. And I think the pandemic was really the first time that we all faced our own mortality, or family members or community members faced it for the first time, truly. That has led to a lot of new companies and services being offered that really support the aging population, but helping honor legacy. So I'm grateful to be here, Tom.
That's great. Thank you. Just to react to that as well, one of the reasons that we found this so interesting at OATS over the recent years is the proliferation of potential solutions for people, which is really different from, I've been doing this for 20 years at OATS now, and if you go back 10 or 20 years, that we did not have anything like the digital opportunities to address some of these issues that are available to people that run the gamut from pretty extensive programs to things that are almost consumer level that anybody could participate in with relatively short amounts of effort. And so I think it's a really special time for people to be looking at how to take advantage of the opportunities and assets. Oh, there's a dog coming into the picture. We've got a cat and a dog. We're all set. All right, let's go to the next question here. Some of the conversation is focusing around the sort of preparing for the disasters, which are unexpected, right? But on the other hand, end of life for people or trusted will planning is actually focusing on something that is really inevitable for all of us, even if we're not sure of the timing. How does that help you think a little bit about the work you're doing? Is there a kind of a difference between the sort of surprise that we need to be ready for, but that could be an unexpected, challenge or catastrophe, versus things that are just kind of the ongoing effort to be ready for what's going to be coming, that we just should be doing something? How do you think about that? Let's start with Cody. You went last. Let's put you on the spot.
Yeah, estate planning, I think you have these like demystified myths about estate planning, that like it only applies when you die, and it's such a lost art. Where reality is, like, if you're incapacitated, aging, or you're taking care of an aging loved one, like the ability to come in and make medical and financial decisions on someone's behalf is incredibly powerful. And a lot of times it's too late often for families to take advantage of that. So we looked at starting this business, really, how do we just educate the general population about estate planning? It's not just when you pass, it still has effect when you're alive or incapacitated. And it's the biggest gap is just education. People don't know anything about estate planning. That's why over half the country doesn't have it. And then there's the cost barriers for a lot of families. If you're even middle income, spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 with an attorney, a local attorney, you're still getting a great set of documents. I still am a full fan of attorneys, but a lot of families can't afford that. So what are their alternatives? And until the last 10 years, 15 years of online companies trying to do this, well, it didn't exist. That option was not there. And then also, it's just the ongoing maintenance of an estate plan. Something that concerns me the most, and Glenn will talk about this, is that you have 100 million families that have a will, they have a trust, but they've never updated it. It's been 30, 40, 50 years. It's in a box in the closet or the attic. It was never communicated to the family. Therefore, it does not exist. If you can't find it, there's nothing to go off of. So where you store it, even if you have the physical copy, you should store it online in your Prisidio account. And the opportunity to communicate that it exists, where it's stored with loved ones, that if something happens to you, you're incapacitated, or you do pass away, that people can step in and help out. So it's really, again, education, awareness, and accessibility is how we looked at scaling our business. And I'm sure Glenn has a lot of parallels to what he's doing at Prisidio.
Great. How about Shoshana? I saw you nodding a little bit while I was framing that question. What's your take on this?
So absolutely everything Cody said is true. In the book, we suggest that people create something called a when I die file. And that file could be a shoebox, it could be a digital cloud-based thing, it could be stored in Prisidio. But the idea is that there is an assortment of things that you need to have that's an access point, an entry point to your life for your loved ones. And of course, it includes your paperwork and documents, your will and trust, your healthcare power of attorney, your advance directive, some of your important account information so that people have access to that. And then we also suggest having some just softer, more intangible things for your family to access in that When I Die file. And oh, I love this. Someone's holding up a book. I'm dead. Now what? I kind of wish that we had stolen that title. We can't hear you because you're muted, but please put it in chat. That's a phenomenal title. The beauty of having a single entry point for people is that your loved ones and family know exactly what your wishes are in the case of a disaster, in the case that you can't speak for yourself. And they have access to your life in the case that they may need to negotiate it. And I know Glenn, part of Glenn's inspiration for Prisidio was turning this When I Die file into a digital cloud-based vault that would be secure and that your entire family could contribute to. And that's why I'm on his advisory board. I thought it was such a brilliant idea. The other thing I would say is that we just need to build resilience as we age. So there are a lot of ways to do that, to build a sense of a network and a support system around you. So in the event of a disaster, or should you become ill or incapacitated, you have people who know you, who will be there for you, and who can watch after you. There's a great movement in the US called the Village Network, which many of you may be aware of, which is local networks in your neighborhood that you can access to help with things like setting up a computer or getting you to a medical appointment. And it's just a neighborhood peer network for people who are retired or aging to support one another. And there's a lot of data to bear out that when there are natural disasters, it is your local neighborhood that becomes the most essential part of recovery and survival. So, I feel like this is a bigger idea of just building resilience and support around you.
That's great. Thank you for that. And Glenn, did you want to weigh in on that one as well?
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a difficult subject, right? Death. But when I'm speaking, I put on a slide, and all it has is 100%, just 100 on the percent. And the reality is that that's the percentage we're all going to die. Hopefully not today or tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And it's about showing your loved ones you care, because this all used to be a lot simpler, maybe not easier, but simpler, right? 50 years ago, if someone in your family passed away, whoever the loved one is left behind, whether it's a sibling, a spouse, a child, you become an archaeologist, right? And you go to the dig site, which is that person's residence, and you go through the file cabinet and the kitchen drawer, and you get business cards and where did they bank and what's their insurance policy. Today, I mean, we're dealing with such a blend of physical and digital information, and the problem is so much of this is getting lost, right? And that's such a key component of it is how do you make sure you communicate with the right people at the right time? Because it's so much broader, right? What do you have? Where is it? What do you value? Who do you work with, right? Cody and Trust and Will have done an incredible job educating people and providing an instrument to help people who takes care of children or a pet, and helping guide people through probate and all these really critical things. But it's just as important to be able to sit here and, and we believe the will control things like, my child gets this, my sibling gets this. But at the end of the day, it's also just as important about why. What is it? Why was it of value to you? Who do you work with? And there's so much of it that's what we're trying to do and help with. And I mean, the fact is 10,000 people a day in the US are dying, 184,000 people worldwide. It's natural, right? We don't know what's going to happen and when, but when I look at it, I have 3 children. I have a wife who I adore. Very blessed. My parents are still alive. My in-laws are alive. I have responsibility up, down, and across my family, right? And I show them I love them by taking care of them. And part of it is making sure all my important information is together, it's accessible. And if something happens to me, that my wife knows where to find this, my children know where to find it. And that's why it's so exciting to be a part of this panel, because it covers so many different aspects of this, with all these different life transitions.
That's great. One other question that's been just kind of popped into my mind while you were talking, not something that we had talked about before, but I have a friend who does investing, and he refers to certain topics as having the ick factor, which is just stuff you don't want to talk about because it makes everybody uncomfortable. And I think each of us has that challenge with the work that we're talking about today, whether it's our anxiety about end of life. Obviously, death is a very difficult topic for many people. Trusts and wills, have an element of who you're going to support in your legacy, and there are some significant disputes that emerge from that. It can be very uncomfortable. And Glenn, the same set of issues around what kind of information you want to protect and who you're going to give access to, and how to kind of deal with that, getting over the hurdle of talking about or addressing something that is not fun. So how do you get people to act when it's something that has so much of a, maybe an uncomfortable or a challenging topic like this? Whoever wants to raise their hand and pop in.
I guess I'll go ahead, Cody.
Cody, beat you to it.
Shoshana's smiling as I probably say this. There's never a great time to have this conversation. There's never a worse time to have this conversation. Like, having this conversation in general, I think will get you more comfortable with it. It'll get your family more comfortable with it. When we started this company 6 years ago, I'd never talked to my parents. I've retired parents. Dad's now 79, mom's 69. And my dad this year, he had his first health care. And, at first, they had the estate plan. It wasn't much other than I knew my brother and I had a role in it. So it was like, okay, at some point, this will eventually come into play. And then he had his health care this year, and my mom's still around, but she's went from part-time retired, part-time working to full-time caregiver. And my brother and I being a mental support system for her while she still has her 92-year-old mother alive, and that her and her siblings are helping kind of navigate her kind of final years. And for my dad specifically, the message that he had for me is he went in for surgery, and he's like, hey, just take care of your mom. And I was like, hey, you're good. You'll be fine. It's early detection of a blood cancer. But effectively, it went through his head. He ran through the scenarios I might die, or it maybe happens sooner rather than I thought. I said, look back at your life. I was like, look at the 2 sons you raised. Look at the life you built. Look at your I have a 3.5-year-old. Look at your granddaughter and the relationship that you have. You've lived a great life. Don't let that get in the way of the scariness of what could happen, and just live every day with the fullest and best intentions. And if you can try and adopt that mindset, it's the voice in the back of our heads throughout our entire lives that we have to fight with more than anyone external. But if you can have peace with that, and then have, again, an estate plan in place that kind of preserves your legacy, whether it's with us or an attorney or someone else, just have this weight off your shoulders that you can live every day, maybe as if it's your last, but if it's your best, best day ever each day coming forward.
Yeah, and I would add, like Cody, my dad, 77, had his first real health scare this year, and thankfully he's been ahead of the curve. When you found a company, you have instant testers for you, and my dad was an early one with us. Cody, you'll know the same story, right? But he had his first health scare, and it's a matter of I think we all got educated by what we saw with COVID and how many people suddenly lost their lives. And more importantly, the amount of work people have had to do is clean up in mass of closing down an estate. And by the way, let's not mix up. Estate doesn't necessarily have to mean millions of dollars in assets. It's you have an automobile to sell, life insurance policy to cash in, and $2,000 in a savings account, right? That's an estate. And as I talked with my father, I have legal responsibility as his executor. And I think a lot of people saw it and realized, I don't want to leave that burden to my family, because it is a real amount of challenge. And it's so much broader. And I'll give you the story. So my father, we had a conversation in the hospital, and it somehow came up. He said, you know, do you know the most important thing I have in my life, like physically? And I was like, I had no idea, truly had no idea what it was. And it turned out to be this hope chest that I've seen in his house a 1,000 times. And every time I look over it, every single time I've looked over it. And it's one of those items that, you know, let's fast forward, if he passes away down the road, my brother and sister, we go to the house and we take what we want, right? Each as a memory of my father. And then you start putting the yellow sticker, the red sticker for like $5, $10, or $1 on, you know, for the garage sale. And that would have been this item, this hope chest, worn down a little bit. And we would put the yellow sticker, right? The $5. And then someone comes along and says, I'll give you $1 for it. And we're like, take it, you know. But now it's different. And what my dad identified and was able to do kind of through, you know, through our solution is he identified as a thing. And guess what? He's got a video. And we know now this hope chest is the most important thing for him. And why is because my dad's mother passed away on the birthing table. When he entered this world, she left this world. That is the only thing that he has of his mother. The only thing. And it went from the yellow sticker to my brother and sister and I are going to be fighting over who gets this. And it's something that's so easy to overlook, but so important to my dad. And that's what we can't forget in all of this is, you know, it's not just what you have of value, but it's our stories. It's about memorabilia and family mementos. And unfortunately, those things often get lost in this.
How about you, Shoshana? I know that you've had the topic of end of life and you know, the way that you've been coming at it in your writing is really distinctive. How do you get people to be unstuck when it comes to starting to open up about this?
It's a challenge. In fact, I wrote the book on this, and my own mother is in complete denial that she's ever going to die. I think she believes that she's invincible and will live forever. And when I asked her what kind of care she might want at the end of life, she really took me by surprise and said, keep me alive by all means necessary. I want all medical intervention, and I want you to go to the end of the earth to keep me alive. And here I had just written a book about how that can create real suffering for people because we have the medical technology now to prop up a life indefinitely, but there can be very little quality of life in those scenarios and very little chance of recovery. And I wanted her to understand that, but she was really hesitant to talk about that with me. And so what I ended up doing was sitting down with her and taking a side door into the conversation. And what I mean by that is I said, Mom, I would love to just hear about some of your childhood stories. You know, what was your childhood bedroom like? Tell me about your first crush. Tell me about when you got into trouble. I want to hear those stories. Those stories don't feel accessible to me. And she was off to the races. Just wanted to talk for an hour. So I hit record on my phone. And I captured all of these beautiful stories about her childhood growing up in the Bronx. As you know, a first generation, her parents didn't speak English and all of the challenges she faced. It was a fascinating journey. And then I said, Mom, this is incredible. I love having these stories. Now, can you tell me about what you want the rest of your life to look like? Where do you see yourself living? What kind of things do you want to do? Do you want to travel? You know, how can we help you live that kind of life? And that was a way to open up and access a conversation that can be very difficult to have. And it's a beautiful conversation to have with your loved ones, and just to learn more about them. It was really edifying for me. And I'll just say that I just wanted to build on what Glenn said, that, you know, you're not just transferring your values when you create a will and trust. You're also transferring, so you're not just transferring your valuables, you're transferring your values and your stories and a sense of who you are and what you have to give. And I think that people often miss that because they get stuck in the paperwork part. But it's as important for the people you love to understand who you are, and that helps them represent you. when you are not able to speak for yourself. That helps them be a good agent for you in the world, helps them navigate healthcare and family dynamics and all of the things that present themselves at the end of life that can get people into really tricky situations.
Great, thank you for that. I will say I've been very inspired by IDEO because of your focus on design thinking, which involves, of course, starting by asking really good questions of the people that we're working with. And a few years ago, I did a project where I went to a hospice in Connecticut, and I traveled there every month or so for about a year and interviewed the people that were in the hospice, asking design thinking questions right out of the IDEO playbook. Things
That's
like
wonderful.
what's a good day for you, and what's a bad day, and what kinds of things are important to you right now. And we actually have an article that I wrote up, just wrote up the findings, and it's coming out in Next Avenue on December 7th. So for those of you that read Next Avenue, it's a wonderful online publication focused on older adult issues. And but the thing that I got out of it that made it so interesting about thinking about this work is that it was incredibly rewarding to talk to people in a hospice. They were full of really brilliant insights and so intensely interested in the conversation, and the level of personal connection. I came away each time feeling uplifted in a way that I felt much more human and much more alive from it. And the people that I talked to and worked with were really also really excited about the chance to do it. And so instead of feeling like focusing on end of life was some horrible, trauma for us, it was actually something that we came away with some sense of meaning and uplifting from it. It was really surprising and wonderful.
I love that so much, Tom. I mean, nobody knows better what people need as they age than people who are aging.
Yeah, I will
If
say,
you
by
want
the
to
way,
know what people need, you
yeah,
ask them directly.
you find out, right? I remember interviewing a guy in New Rochelle, and this is relevant to Cody. He was very kind of nervous about being interviewed. He felt awkward because he was sick. He had a bandage on his head, and he was feeling worried about his mental state. And we started chatting, and I pointed at a thing on the floor, and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's my bowling trophy from Bowling 300, which you just posted in the chat that I think it was your relative." And I said, "You bowled a 300 game." And so we started, he took out his clippings, and that opened up a whole conversation about how he wanted to be interacting with people in his environment in his last days. And we, in addition to sharing a glass of wine at 10 o'clock in the morning, we just had a really special time together. And I think some of these conversations are really the grist of what we want our lives to be about, so we should be doing it. Two more big topics getting into this next phase, and then we are going to go to a breakout room. For people that have joined a little bit after, we're going to be doing breakout rooms, and you'll get a chance to go kind of a little bit more in depth with the panelists on some interesting topics, and Deirdre will come on and brief us as we get ready for that. But one other question here: technology. At OATS, we're the tech guys as we think about this all the time, figuring out how to get older folks to use tech and supporting people in it. But what is technology really making? What's the difference that technology is bringing to these questions for you? What's the value? What's the role? Let's hear from Glenn. We haven't started with you lately. You're on.
Yeah, again, our world has become digital, right? And it creates wonderful solutions out there, like the ability of what Cody and team are doing at Trust and Will, and spearheading not just the technology itself, but the education in the marketplace. And I came off about 10 years at DocuSign, between being a partner and selling my company and then staying on with them. E-signature, same thing. Cody is really driving, how do we get states to accept a digital copy of the will, right? And pushing that forward. But technology is also causing the challenges that are driving this, right? I mean, again, it used to be everything was paper and physical, but it's how do we gain value from it? And by that, an example would be, I tell people all the time, it's wonderful to have a, my daughter today, this morning, had knee surgery, something, simple procedure, but it was a surgery. And, I reminded my wife, right, we have healthcare power of attorneys on everyone in the family. And it's so important to be able to not just have those, it's great, but if it's in the file cabinet behind me, it's useless, right? Because a lot of times these things are needed in the time of emergency. And guess what? When it's needed, I may not be sitting here right by that. And so it's the ability through these wonderful devices to have access to it, to be able to keep things secure, to be able to share things with people and make sure they are aware of them. And I think that's really important. Is technology is causing some of these problems, right? The proliferation of content, and where is it and where do I find it? But it's also the opportunity to drive, how can we make sure it's accessible? How do we make sure it's simple and easy? And for us, like, one of the things is like what we're doing, others have tried and done before, but they've done it really for kind of the high net worth individuals and people with, significant amounts of money. I think everybody has this problem. And I know Cody agrees with the same thing. It's like, I think one of the things that Cody and I both agree very strongly about is we've got to democratize these solutions for everybody, because it's not just, a problem faced by some portion of people that have some level of income or net worth. We all have these challenges, and it's our responsibility on how do we help people address these.
Great. I'm just noticing one of the comments that popped up in the chat is about how to handle a caregiving challenge where Mary's husband had a fall, and she's anxious about what might happen if she's away and he falls while she's not there. And technology has the offer of there are now a lot of devices that they call wearables that you can have as simple as even a smartwatch, the Apple Watch, or multiple different wearables that people can wear, that if you fall and the wearable hits the ground or falls at that speed, it will set off an alarm, and it can alert someone in your family or your caregiving team that you are potentially in need of assistance. And so some of those tools are actually fairly easy to deploy and provide a solution there. Cody, how about you? What's the role of tech here?
Yeah, well, to the example in the chat, I mean, fall is top of mind for me, for my grandmother and for my wife's grandmother, and they both have the life alert, which if they fall, it calls the authority, it calls 911, and it notifies loved ones that so-and-so has fallen. But even for my own parents, I bought them the Apple Watch not to have a cool tech device on their wrist, but specifically for heart rate detection and fall detection. If they fall, or if there's a spike in their blood pressure, that it can notify them. And then within the health app on Apple, and I think there's an equivalent with Google's ecosystem, you can notify loved ones. It's putting in a legacy contact within Apple or Google. It's making sure that people, if something in your health or a fall takes place, are notified in real time. And I'm grateful that this technology exists today, and not just that the fall happened, but where they are. That's the other big thing. Or somebody got into a wreck or an accident, that you know where they're located. So within my immediate family and on the iPhone, and I think you can do the same on Android, sharing location with loved ones does matter, especially if you have onset Alzheimer's, dementia, where people we had a neighbor down the street who's since passed, but he would get out and go drive his car, and his poor daughter, who's older, she would have to go chase down the street after him, and we'd get the neighbors to go, he's not going more than 10 miles an hour. We'd have to go chase him down, literally, in his vehicle, because he'd wake up and he'd start his day like he did for 50 years in his career. But, he had full-time caregiving. So, there's some things that are in our control, and technology is a great enabler of that. And in the lens of estate planning and Prisidio, at least, is like knowing where these documents exist, whether there's a required physical copy or if it can be a digital copy, and making sure it's communicated to loved ones. We have in the Trustable dashboard, and I think the same with Prisidio's, you can notify loved ones. So you can notify, in our case, I can notify my wife, my parents, my mother-in-law, that our estate plan is with Trustable. And if anything happens, go to them. Don't try and figure it out or find it. Just go to them. They have a digital copy. Same with Prisidio. Go to Prisidio if you have access to your family's account.
Excellent. Thank you. And Shoshana, you mentioned the dementia question. Why don't you take that and help share what you're thinking about that as well?
Sure. I know we're running low on time, and we want to get to these breakouts, but I think dementia care is one of the most important and challenging issues that we're facing. As we're living longer lives, our brains are failing faster than our bodies. And the truth is it can be very tricky to get the kind of care that you need when you have dementia, because you may not be able to ask for yourself or express your wishes. My father suffered with dementia for 5 years before he died, and I learned this the hard way and firsthand, that we had not asked him the questions when he was still compos mentis and had the ability to answer them about what kind of care he would want and what quality of life meant to him. So what you can do, and what I've now done, is you can write as much as you want in your advanced healthcare directive about how you want to be cared for should you suffer with onset Alzheimer's or dementia. And for me, quality of life means being able to recognize the people I love and being able to feed myself and take care of myself. And so I wrote pretty elaborate instructions saying that if I cannot do those things, I would like to not be given curative treatments like antibiotics should I pick up a little bug, a flu or a pneumonia or whatever it is, and that I would like to just be able to die of natural causes. You can write those instructions in an advanced healthcare directive, and most people don't know that. There's a lot you can ask for. And also just planning for extra dementia care at the end of life. I know long-term healthcare insurance can be an economic hardship for people. I have seen it be very helpful in terms of in-home care and making sure that people can afford to age in place and be in the place where they're most comfortable. Being in a facility when you have dementia can be very disarming and confusing. And aging in place is really the place where people want to be. So having, either putting aside money or writing down instructions for wanting in-home care can be a real source of comfort for people earlier in life.
That's great. Thank you for that. So we're going to get ready to move to the breakout groups. But before we do that, I wanted to make sure, I know that people may want to follow up and connect with the programs or resources that you guys are bringing to the equation here. So let's just do a quick run through. I'll start with it for people that want to know more about OATS, the work that we're doing with Senior Planet. You can go to our website, of course. The best place for most people to start is seniorplanet.org, which has all of our daily free classes. All of the programs from OATS are available to anybody who comes to join who's over the age of 50, and they're always free. So that makes it easy to work with. And we are an affiliate of AARP. We're very grateful for support from AARP, but our programs are available to anyone, regardless of any connection to AARP. And then if you want to learn more about how we think and who we work with, we also have a website, oats.org, oats.org. And then finally, we have a hotline. Some people in the chat have asked questions that relate to some sort of technical issues. There's a free hotline on the OATS on seniorplanet.org that it's an 888 number. You can look it up there on the website there, but it's you can actually just call our hotline with some simple tech questions, and we'll try to help you from there. Glenn, how do people connect to you at Prisidio if they wanted to see? Is that already up it's in the chat there?
It's in the chat. I did a poor job of putting it so it's clickable, so I'll try and update that. But we are like Cody and honestly following their footsteps. They've been real trailblazers in kind of H-Tech technology, but partner of AARP, part of their H-Tech collaborative. And I'll put a link. We actually have a special member approved offer from AARP, and we'll put that in there as well.
That's great. And then I'll just mention, when I was trying to go find your website, I spelled it wrong. It's Prisidio, so I'm just flagging that for people. And then Cody, did you post also your link in there?
I can put, it's trustimul.com, and I'll put it in here for the group, and specifically the AARP link, because that comes with a 20% member discount. So I'm going to put that link in specifically. Right.
Okay, great. And I see that Shoshana's book is up there. It's with BJ Miller, A Beginner's Guide to the End, is available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold, which sounds great. And again, I will go read that because I'm also a fan of BJ's in addition to Shoshana's. So that gives us our sort of how to connect to us stuff. I do want to always emphasize, by the way, we always present what we think are wonderful resources and people who we should be paying attention to in the marketplace. But of course, these are just meant as starting points for your search out there. So AARP and OATS don't endorse specific products and services. We just want people to have informed starting places, and we encourage you to look around and find different options before making choices and choosing vendors for any of the services that we talk about. It's really helpful for people to do a little bit of research and get a feel for what you're subscribing to and the costs and things like that, and do a little bit of comparison shopping as well. We really encourage and recommend that. So just please make sure that you take this as a starting point, not that we're asking you to just subscribe to one of these services. I'm sure people know that, but it's a good, important disclaimer.